The Micah Johnson shooting was the deadliest incident for U.S. law enforcement since the September 11th terrorist attacks. Outraged by recent police shootings of black men, Micah Johnson took up arms and went to a protest and started gunning down police officers. He killed 5 officers and injured several others and became known as the Dallas police shooter. Today, we're going to unpack this whole incident and take a deep dive into Micah's life and what led him down the path of destruction.
Come on! Move away from this area. This guy's got a rifle.
Welcome to Murder Monologue. My name is Josh and I will be your host today. Micah Johnson was born in Magee, Mississippi and raised in Mesquite, Texas. During a VA doctor visit, Micah described his childhood as stressful. Join the club, buddy. I feel like everyone will have some sort of story or stress in their life growing up. It's how you deal with it that really resonates. So join the club. Yeah, everyone has had a stressful childhood in some way. When he was 4 years old, his parents divorced and he started living with his mother in Mesquite, Texas. He transferred to John Horn High School when he was 17 and participated in the Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps. He struggled in school and didn't get good grades at all. He ranked at the bottom of his class, 430th out of 453 students to be exact. So he was not academically inclined at all. He did end up graduating in 2009 with a 1.98 GPA. I'm not exactly sure how you graduate with that. However, 2 years after he graduated, he also enrolled in college. Yep, not sure how that happened either. There are clearly no standards at Richland College. Yeah, he got accepted into Richland College and enrolled in 4 classes. And as you could guess, he never finished any of them. Shocker. His enrollment into the college is believed to be how he gained access to El Central College, where he made his final stand after the shootout. So, he didn't have time to attend his 4 classes, but he did have time to scope out a different college for where he would potentially make a final stand during a police shootout. So, congratulations, buddy. This was highlighted after the incident because it seemed like Micah knew exactly what he was doing and where he was going, and police wanted to know why. Well, after doing some digging, they found out that he probably had access to the college and was pre-planning this whole thing. He was enlisted in the U.S. Army Reserves from March of 2009 to April of 2015 as a carpentry and masonry specialist. He completed basic training, which required certification on an M16 rifle and an M4 carbine. Although according to most of the people that knew Micah in the Army Reserves, they all said he was a horrible shot. He was barely able to pass the lowest certification level for all of the weapons. They also said he just wasn't a smart person, clearly. He barely passed high school, dropped out of college. So everyone agreed. He really just wasn't smart, or not necessarily that he wasn't smart. He just didn't apply himself at all. It was almost like laziness or something. While in the reserves, he was sent to active duty in September of 2013 and was stationed in Afghanistan until July of 2014. So he was there quite a long time, almost a full year. During his tour of duty, Michael exhibited very strange behavior and was described as a loner. He'd be seen eating his lunch alone when everyone else in his squad was eating together. On May 1st, 2014, during his deployment, he was accused of sexual harassment by a female soldier. This soldier also sought a restraining order against him. The female soldier and Micah were actually really good friends before this falling out. They knew each other from the reserves and they actually hung out quite a bit. They were close with each other for 5 years before this incident. Although it was said they never had a relationship with each other, Micah's mother said that she spent the night at their house quite often and they would sleep in the same room together. So they could have just been friends, but it seems like they probably had more going on. One day before they were deployed, she told Micah that she was actually going to college elsewhere. Micah got so upset that she was going to be leaving him that he punched through the window of her car. In doing so, he got a severe laceration on his arm and had to be rushed to the hospital. During their tour in Afghanistan, this same girl reported a pair of her underwear went missing from her laundry bag. A barracks check was performed by a ranking officer. This officer discovered a pair of underwear in Micah's quarters, and another 3 pair were found in his pocket as he was trying to dispose of them in a nearby dumpster. So, caught red-handed with her underwear, for sure. They were in his pocket and in his barracks. He had 4 pairs total. According to the female, Micah had asked her for a pair of underwear several times, but she declined. After the incident, he was placed on a watch where his weapons were taken away from him, and he was basically on suicide watch. He was escorted around by a person every single hour of every day. Someone would sleep next to him. Anywhere he would go, he would be escorted to make sure that he wasn't going to commit suicide, or worse yet, he wasn't going to attack anyone. Having this happen to him was humiliating. He not only got caught with the underwear, he's now being escorted around this base by another person. All eyes were on him, and pretty much everyone was making fun of him at that point. Because of this whole incident, Micah was essentially told to leave. He was transferred to an air base and basically was just waiting there to be transferred home. As he was waiting to be transferred home, they searched his barracks again. They found an unauthorized grenade and a .50 caliber round which he was hiding. They also found another soldier's prescribed medication. Micah was sent back to the US and was supposed to be given an other than honorable discharge. However, paperwork got screwed up during this whole thing, and he ended up getting an honorable discharge. Micah was sent home with the taste of resentment in his mouth because he felt like he was mistreated in the military. This was the start of his downward spiral. Micah's parents basically said he was never the same once he got home from Afghanistan. This whole story also reminds me of Mark Essex. This guy was, pretty much to the exact T, this story. Mark Essex was actually abused in the military. This was way back in the 70s, I think, 60s, 70s. So he was actually abused because he was a black man and they mistreated him in the military. And he basically had so much vengeance against that he decided to take up arms and started shooting up a whole city. It ended with a military helicopter doing strafe runs at this hotel that he was barricaded in. It's an insane story, and if you want to learn more about it, I actually have done a video on it. So just click up here, and you can listen to that story as well. It is crazy, and it's all pretty much on videotape. It's a crazy story, so take a look at it right up here. Once Micah was home and officially done with the army, he continued to live with his mother. In one story, Michael's mother said that he was trying to seek help from the VA for an injured back, but no one would help him fill out paperwork and he really just didn't know what to do, so he kind of gave up without even being seen. He then began receiving payments from the state to help care for his disabled younger brother. Michael's job was essentially caring for his brother at this point. In doing so, this left him with a lot of free time, and this basically allowed him to sit and stew about what had happened overseas and how his life had gotten to where it was at this point. He was essentially a loner. He began searching the internet to find a group that he felt like he belonged to. He also started joining groups that had ties to the Black Panther Party. So all of these groups that were tied to the Black Panther movement pretty much like accepted him as their own, and he became involved in those. He also frequented a gun club called the Huey P. Newton Gun Club, which was essentially one of the founding fathers of the Black Panther Party. There, Micah would practice shooting his guns. He met a few people at this club. He also started taking classes at the Academy of Combative Warrior Arts Studio. That's where he actually learned some hand-to-hand combat skills. After this whole incident, the FBI actually investigated into this combative warrior arts studio and found out that Micah didn't actually train or test in any of the tactical skills, that he was literally just there for like hand-to-hand combat, because they also taught like tactical training for firearms. And in these videos, you can see that Micah was very tactical with how he was handling himself with a firearm. So no one really knows where he learned that from. Obviously, the Army Reserves probably taught him a little bit, but according to all the people that knew him there, he was kind of like a screw up in the Army Reserves and didn't really care about learning any of that. So no one really knows where he got those skills from. All while doing these things, Micah continued to talk to his mother and father regarding his distrust for law enforcement. So essentially, he is just sitting there stewing in his hatred for law enforcement, for anyone of authority, because of really what happened to him in Afghanistan. Also, he is pretty much part of the Black Panther Party at this point. So anytime he would hear about a police shooting in the news, he just got even more ingrained into that mindset. Videos kept surfacing of these police shootings and officers killing black people. Doesn't matter if it was a justified shooting or not. Just because it was in the 24-hour news cycle, Micah just kept hearing about it every single day. And so he just sat there and stewed about it and finally decided that he was going to do something about it. He began to plan out an attack on police officers. He would start writing in a journal about how he was going to pull off this attack. He also began collecting materials to make bombs. And I do apologize, I'm like coming down with a little bit of a cold, so my voice is like all over the place here. If you hear me like crackle a few times, I'm like drinking a ton of water right now, and I hope this thing passes. But yeah, if you hear my voice crackle, I'm starting to get a cold, so I need to film this before I lose my voice. Now, fast forwarding to July 5th of 2016, news broke that Alton Sterling died in police custody. Alton Sterling was a 37-year-old black man killed by two Baton Rouge police officers. The officers were attempting to control Sterling's arms and ended up shooting him. They said Sterling was trying to reach for a gun in his waistband. Police received a call regarding someone selling CDs and waving a gun around. As police arrived at the scene, they immediately saw Sterling there, and they knew exactly who he was. This wasn't the first time they've dealt with him, so they knew his background. They knew he sold CDs, and they knew that he more than likely had the capability of getting access to a gun. So they immediately walked over to him and started questioning him based on the call. Someone selling CDs and waving a gun around. Like, he fit the description. So as police got to the scene, they saw him. They immediately went up to him and tried to handcuff him, only because the report said there was a gun involved. So they obviously want to handcuff someone for their safety. As they tried to handcuff him, Alton Sterling began to fight back. As the fight ensued, Sterling was apparently reaching for his pants pockets. Police then started yelling he was reaching for a gun. Then 3 shots rang out and Sterling was dead. After the investigation, they did find a gun in his pants pocket and no charges were filed against the officers. The police department did settle a civil lawsuit for millions to the Sterling family. This incident ignited rage within Micah. Adding to his rage, the very next day after Sterling's death, news broke of another police shooting. This time, it was the shooting of Philandro Castile, who was shot during a traffic stop in Minneapolis. This shooting was a little crazy. 32-year-old Philando Castile, a black man, was shot during a traffic stop by Officer Geronimo Yanez. Castile was driving with his girlfriend, Diamond Reynolds, and their 4-year-old daughter when, at 9 p.m., he was pulled over by Yanez and another officer in Falcon Heights, a suburb of St. Paul, Minnesota. After being asked for his license and registration, Castile told Officer Yanez that he had a firearm. He was licensed to have a firearm. After he told the officer that he had a firearm, Yanez replied, "Don't reach for it then." Pretty simple, right? Like, don't reach for it, we're all gonna be fine. Castile responded, "I was reaching for it," to which Yanez replied, "Don't pull it out." Castile then replied, "I'm not pulling it out." Like, dude, chill, we're good. Like, I told you I have a gun. Like, I'm not going to take it out at this point. You're telling me not to. Everyone just needs to take a step down. We're at like a 9 right now, and we need to come down to like a 4. Diamond Reynolds, his girlfriend, even got involved in this conversation. She was basically like, "Officer, he's not pulling out the gun. Just calm down." Yanez, the officer, again repeated, "Don't pull it out." He then proceeded to fire 7 close-range shots at Castile, hitting him 5 times. Castile died of his wounds at 9:37 p.m. at the local hospital, about 20 minutes after being shot. Officer Yanez was charged with second-degree murder, and quite honestly, rightfully so. Like, if this whole story is correct, then the officer was clearly freaking out. He is afraid of guns and doesn't have any business being a police officer. When someone literally tells you, "Hey, I have a gun," and you're telling them, "Don't reach for it, don't reach for it," and the guy's like, "I'm not reaching for it," and then you just turn around and shoot him, like, yeah, you shouldn't be an officer. You should be charged with murder. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. He went to trial and was acquitted of the charges by a jury. The jurors told the press that the specific wording of the law regarding culpable negligence was the main factor among other things leading to the acquittal. Again, this shooting sparked something in Micah that could not be extinguished. Like, I agree, this officer should be charged with murder, and if it's because of the verbiage in a law, like, that's crazy. Micah basically needed to get revenge on this whole thing. He took these to heart. Like, this was something that was a part of him, and he felt like he needed to do something about it. All of the planning that he had been doing in his journal about essentially a terrorist attack on officers, like, he's going to do it. On the evening of July 7th, a crowd of hundreds of protesters gathered in downtown Dallas for a Black Lives Matter march. Now, this was like 2 shootings within 3 days of each other, or 2 shootings within 2 days of each other, and now on the 3rd day, everyone's protesting. So the verdict, or like the court case for this Castile murder, wasn't even out yet. Like, they didn't even go to trial. This was right after the shooting, so no one really knew the details. And there was all just speculation at that point, and the investigation was still ongoing. So yes, they had a right to protest peacefully. Everyone has that right, but like, you need to know all the details as well. Now, I agree, this officer should be charged with murder. However, I'm not going to be out there protesting the day that it happens, because I have no freaking clue what actually happened. So until I know more information about it, like, I'm just going to figure out what happened, right? But Micah, he is so upset about this, like, he has to do something. So on the evening of July 7th, a bunch of protesters gather in downtown Dallas for a Black Lives Matter march. Micah decided that was the night he was going to make his stand. He left his house promising his mother that he would stay out of trouble. Around 8:58 p.m., I like that they say around, and then they give you an exact time. Around 8:58. Not around 9. Around 8:58 and like 27 seconds. Johnson parked his SUV sideways on Lamar Street in front of the east entrance of the college at Building A. So in this map, you can see Building A, where he parked his vehicle. He left the vehicle hazard lights on and blinking. At the time, the street had been cleared out in anticipation of the protest, number 1 on the map. So this is where he parked his vehicle and he's going to be doing some craziness. After he parked his vehicle, because obviously you want to do as much damage as possible, he decided that he was going to put on a bulletproof vest and begin loading his guns. He then stepped out of his Tahoe with a rifle and 2 handguns in tow. Taking cover at street level, he began shooting at groups of police and protesters who were gathered on Main Street. Johnson was believed to have talked to 3 of the officers before he started shooting. Number 2 on the map. So this is where the protesters were. He had a clear line of vision of all of these police officers and a few protesters that were starting to gather. 3 officers were killed in the initial gunfire, while at least 3 others and a civilian were injured. 11 officers fired back. During the shooting, officers, unaware of where the shots were coming from, scrambled to block intersections and were exposed to gunfire as a result.
This is not one person with a. This is a person with a big knife.
Immediately afterwards, Johnson made his way north on Lamar Street, encountering Officer Brent Thompson along the way. A civilian recorded a video of the encounter from the hotel balcony on Lamar Street. This is the same video, or part of the video, that was in my intro. The video shows Micah with tactical clothing on and armed with his rifle. He began firing indiscriminately to draw officers near his position. When Officer Thompson approached a corner, Micah engaged him in a gunfight, forcing him to take cover behind the concrete pillar. Micah fired towards one side of the pillar, then ran over to the other side of the pillar to flank Officer Thompson. Once he flanked him, he shot him multiple times from behind, killing him. This is number 3 on the map. Johnson, now injured during the firefight with Officer Brent Thompson, attempted to enter the Lamar Street entrance of the college by shooting out the glass door, but was unable to make his way in. Number 4 on the map. So he's trying to get in this college, but he's shooting out the windows. He was then met by 2 campus police officers who were near the doorway inside the building. He ended up wounding both of them. Corporal Brian Shaw was shot in the stomach underneath his bulletproof vest, while Officer John Abbott was hit by a flying glass in the legs. Johnson then made his way to Elm Street, where he shot out another glass door and entered the college unseen. This is number 5 on the map. He then made his way to Building B. Hearing the shattered glass, one of the injured campus officers, Corporal Shaw, made his way through the building and discovered a trail of blood leading to a stairwell. Accompanied by another officer, Shaw entered the stairwell and was met with a hail of gunfire coming from above. Unable to see Micah, he held his fire and retreated with the other officer.
Damn it. Shots fired, second floor, outside.
Afterwards, Micah made his way along a mezzanine between the school's 2nd floor dining area and the 3rd floor library. After doing so, he came onto a dead end of windows facing down onto Elm Street. This is number 6 on the map. He shot out multiple windows and fired repeatedly at officers on Elm Street. Number 7 on the map. He hit Michael Smith, a police officer standing in front of a 7-Eleven, killing him and shattering the storefront glass. Officers began entering the college, sealing escape routes from the building, and evacuating students and teachers that were in the building at the time. Approaching Micah on the 2nd floor near the library, officers found that he was secured behind a corner and firing intermittently around the corner at the officers. He was in an area filled with offices and the school's computer servers, with only 2 doors leading to where he was positioned, and a hallway about 30 feet long separating him from the SWAT members. At least 200 gunshots were exchanged at this time. Body camera video released in July of 2021 pursuant to an open records request shows Sergeant Larry Gordon, a SWAT negotiator at the time, and other officers attempting for several hours to negotiate with Micah. The officers were interviewed later and reported that they had sought to negotiate with Micah because he was too heavily armed for the officers to risk charging him. But they were under pressure and could not wait indefinitely because Micah could pop out from behind a corner at any time and shoot an officer. The body camera footage shows Senior Corporal Matt Baines expressing concern that the bullets Micah fired on the second floor were easily penetrating the drywall, making it impossible for the negotiators to find safe cover and posing a risk to any unevacuated students who might have remained in the building. So this situation was dire. They were negotiating with him for several hours, but there was still a huge risk to not only the officers, but any student or teacher that might have been trapped in that building. These bullets could easily go through drywall and hit anything behind the drywall. So it is definitely a situation that they could not wait any longer. In several instances throughout this whole negotiation period, Micah shouted black supremacy, black liberation, and began firing on police officers when they initially cornered him in the hallway. As the officers began asking him questions, he said he would speak to a black officer only and repeatedly referred to himself as X. When the negotiator, Sergeant Gordon, told Micah that he was a black officer, Micah initially responded, "No way." He then told Sergeant Gordon that he served overseas in the military. At one point, as negotiations were deteriorating, Micah told Sergeant Gordon, "The talking is over, it's time for a revolution. If you are my brother, turn your weapon on those behind you." Which, clearly, he's basically saying, hey, if you're truly black, like, turn around and just start shooting the other officers. Nah.
I apologize. You said we're killing your black brothers, right? You know I'm black? All I'm asking is that we resolve this situation, man. I want to hear your story.
The talking is over. It's time for revolution, brother. If you are my brother, turn the weapon on those sides.
All these people are talking in my ear, X, want to know why you're doing this.
African liberation. I love that sound. Y'all want to get some?
I told you, X, I got control over here. I'm trying to make you understand. I got control.
I know that sound.
X, I'm not bullshitting you, man. I hadn't bullshitted you in 45 minutes.
Senior Corporal Jeremy Borkart and others ultimately arrived at an idea to use a bomb disposal remote control vehicle armed with about a pound of C4 explosive. The plan was to move the robot to a point against the wall facing Micah, then detonate the explosives. The device exploded as intended at approximately 2:30 a.m., killing Micah immediately. It was the first time explosives had been used by a police force to take down an active shooter. Although its arm received extensive damage during the explosive, the robot survived with minor injuries and was still functioning after the blast. Can't say the same for Micah. In the aftermath, police investigated Micah's body and equipment. He was found lying next to a rifle, 2 handguns, additional magazines, and a bag filled with supplies. After the standoff, investigators discovered that he had drawn the letters RB and other messages in his own blood while making his way up the stairwell. Although they saw all of these markings, they really couldn't figure out what they were. No one really knew what they meant. In the totality of this whole incident, 5 police officers were killed, 9 others were injured, and 2 civilians were injured. The officers that were killed were identified as Senior Corporal Lauren Ahrens, age 48, who had been with the department since 2002 and formerly served with Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department from 91 to 2002. Officer Michael Kroll, 40, who had been with the department since 2003. Sergeant Michael Smith, 55, a former Army Ranger who had been with the department since 1989. Officer Brent Thompson, 43, a former enlisted Marine who had been with the police department since 2007. Officer Patricio Patrick Zamaripa, 32, a former Navy sailor, an Iraq war veteran who had been with the department since 2010. This went down in the history books as the deadliest single incident for law enforcement officers in the United States since September 11th, 2001. After this whole incident, there was some pretty big backlash to everything. The then president of the Dallas Police Association, Mike Matta, stated that due to the criticism of militarization of police, someone within the Dallas Police Department's chain of command ordered the officers assigned to the protest to not wear military-style bulletproof vests because they did not want the officers to look too militaristically aggressive, and instead wear standard-issue Kevlar vests, which are not able to protect against rifle rounds that Micah fired. For the same reasons, officers were not able to arm themselves with long guns such as AR-15s. Matta was interviewed by the local news station KDFW and said a lot of those shots and a lot of those wounds were chest shots, lower abdomen wound shots, and those heavy vests would have covered them. That is my story of the Micah Johnson shooting. I hope you enjoyed. Please give me a like on this video and subscribe to my page, as I'm going to be continuing to do some content for you. I hope it gets better and better. I'm pretty new at this, so bear with me. But we're going to make it a really good page for everyone to enjoy. And until next time, bye everyone.